Hello everyone. Welcome back to my favorite story. I managed to get some free time and as promised here is a new video. I do apologize if the quality of the video if it is not up to standards. I hope you enjoy. Make sure to check out the writer and subscribe and comment for more. For the next few days, things were very awkward for the rulers of Eldritch kind. It was noticeable to everyone, and the ignorant humans hoped it might be a sign of Aza coming to her senses and dumping Issei. For those in the know, they knew that it was very unlikely to be the case. But the pensive, thoughtful looks on their faces and the uncertain silence between them grew concern within the Eldritch faction, and beyond. Azathoth, the time goddess, suddenly appeared in midstep between spatial and temporal locations. She tilted her head, realizing who called her. Yidra? What brings the Witch of Dreams to call my name so bluntly? She asked playfully. The fact that you don't know narrows it down greatly, Yidra pointed out flatly, sitting on a golden chair in one of her various manors and hidden temples around the world. Our royals are troubled. Yog blinked and blinked again. They are, Yidra frowned. You've been Angu. Our royals are troubled. So they are, Yog acknowledged with a hum. Why is beyond me? They haven't said anything to one another. The universe would know if they had a fight. And you don't have any ideas what might be causing this distress between them? Yidra asked with a cocked head. No, I do. It's just, well... Yog paused, tapping the handle of her sword to her chin. It seems we have an interesting coincidence. Both have separate, unrelated issues they feel the need to speak to the other about. Issei I'm unsure of, just because it could be anything his mostly human mind might latch onto. But Aza's can only be about Issei. Might it be that she is merely troubled that something troubles him? Yidra offered. No, she would have addressed that directly or asked me, or anyone for help figuring out what is wrong. Or if she did something wrong. She hasn't asked, so she hasn't noticed yet. Or more exactly, she noticed and mistakenly assumed it was caused by her own change in behavior. Yog explained. There is no rage or sadness in the new sphere. No ripples in the dreamlands, Yidra noted. Whatever ails each of them, it is not something of a tragedy or a crime. Yog sighed. Well, I suppose even we gods must stoop to conquer sometimes. You stoop at your own leisurely whim, Yidra accused dryly. Yog decided to ignore her entirely. There is one who should be able to shed light on this. But we should tread carefully. Issei and Aza will be mutually upset with us if we hurt her. Even if you fix any mental damage, she said, twirling her sword like a knife before stabbing it into the air before her. Her? Yidra repeated with a regal brow raised, watching as Yog opened a portal, stepping halfway into it before pulling herself back, pulling her target along. Asia blinked at the sudden abduction by a smiling Yog before looking at Yidra with bewilderment. Hello? Madam E, Asia greeted, glancing between both Eldritch curiously. Is something wrong? The nun? Yidra said with a hum. Forgive Yog's rudeness, Asia Argento. For some reason, she believed you were our best or even only option for our current dilemma. Me? Why, is someone hurt? Asia asked in concern. No, nothing like that, Yog assured with a grin, extending her sword's blade to use it as a stick to lean on. See, I'm sure you noticed that the king and queen are having some issues. Not with each other, obviously, but it is starting to worry people. Even the devils are eyeing the situation like Aza might sneeze a black hole suddenly. She can do that, Yidra reminded. I think Asia said with wide eyes. So you wanted me to help you figure out what is bothering them both? Yes, that would be... Yog stopped, trailing off before eyeing Asia. You already know. Asia looked sheepish. They both needed someone to talk to. And I'm sorry, but I think what they said was personal and shared in confidence. Yog's stare pierced Asia's soul beyond the literal sense, examining her throughout the whole of reality. There is no future where you willingly tell us what they said. She noted, more in interest than in praise. You are loyal for them not being the gods you are devoted to, Yidra said in approval as she rose from her seat. Yid, there is no good outcome for forcing the information out of her head, Yog warned urgently. One does not need your powers to know that, azathoth, Ydra said with a headshake as she walked up to Asia. Asia, I will not ask you to betray their trust. But can you help us understand the subject of their concerns? Asia asked, head tilting. I will not ask specifics. But is Issei's concern about his powers or some regret about becoming eldritch? Ydra gave as an example. Is Aza worried about someone trying to hurt Issei? Oh no, nothing like that, Asia said with a smile as she looked away in thought. Aza's concern is about helping Issei. Issei wants to ask Aza a personal question about her past. That narrows it down a bit, Yag granted. And very few of those possibilities are worrisome. May I make a suggestion? Asia asked softly. Of course, Ydra granted with a nod. Issei and Aza are a very good couple. They talk a lot about anything and everything. They also can't hide much from each other. They're horrible at lying to each other. I think they'll ask one another once they realize how much they have stopped talking. And sort it out then, Asia mused. You advise us to do nothing, Ydra noted. I mean, Lady Asia stopped in consideration as she looked at Yog. You can call me Yog, the temporal goddess waved off with a smile. It's just the full name you have to worry about. Asia smiled in thanks. Yes, but it's just, you can see all possible futures, right? Are there any possible futures where this ends badly? Yog stood there silently for a moment of consideration. If there isn't, Asia said with a smile. Perhaps we should just dash. Angu. There is no rage or sadness in the new sphere. No ripples in the dreamlands, Ydra noted. Whatever ails each of them, it is not something of a tragedy or a crime. True, but I don't foresee any timeline where this could end badly for them. Yog mused in observation. So, letting them work it out themselves might be best. I suppose that is what lovers are supposed to do, Ydra said from her throne, observing as Yog stiffened. Shub-Niggurath's presence is distracting you. I apologize for probing that ancient laceration. No, it's fine. If anything, I'm happy that being in love is working out so well for Aza. Yog waved off, glancing to a corner of the room. That said, I'll keep an eye or six on them. Others might try and get them to reconcile, or what humans call it, if this drags out too long. Meanwhile, the Kungur and the Queen are restless. Ectosa commented to her sister. Both Lamia made inches apart while staring into each other's eyes. Should she not be called Gyanar, to go with Kungur? Cthulhu questioned idly. No one will ever question what she is queen of, Ectosa reminded. It is rather irrelevant, Cthulhu decided. Or perhaps not so irrelevant, Ectosa commented. We have a theory, Cthulhu realized. An idea, Ectosa agreed. That is dangerous for us, they said in sync. What if the Sultana condemns us again? Cthulhu cautioned. Unimportant, Ectosa boldly realized. Blasphemous, Cthulhu said without inflection. Only the Sultan matters to us, Ectosa reminded. The Sultana's words, not ours, Cthulhu conceded. Helping one helps both, they each said. They both wish to speak, but neither knows how to start, Ectosa summarized. And both wish to speak of different things, Cthulhu mused. A surprise for both of them? Ectosa reasoned. That appears to be from each to the other, Cthulhu agreed. We need help, Ectosa realized with a frown. Romance is not something we know, Cthulhu agreed. Less so of human romance still, Ectosa pointed out. Girls, maybe I can help? Both sisters turned in surprise to see a smiling outer god. Lady Shub, they greeted, tilting their heads in opposite directions. You would help us? The distance between Aza and Issei is never meant to last. Neither enjoys it, neither wants it, Shub mused affectionately. A little spark will have them colliding and revolving again. And romance is something I observe with interest, among my children and others. The twins nodded. We are at your disposal, Lady Shub. Shub chuckled. It should only take an afternoon, I think. But if this doesn't work, just remember that this was all my idea. That startled both daughters of Cthulhu. You would take the blame? Ectosa asked incredulously. Even if this ends in disaster? Cthulhu added in concern. Your mother is my granddaughter, Shub reminded with a tender smile. I wouldn't let her cry again so soon. Later, everyone knew Issei trained in the woods near Kuo. The devils wisely left him to his space, as would any sane entity that knew who he was romantically involved with. So, Kaneko was once against questioning her sanity since she was currently standing here, looking down at Issei as he took a nap under a tree. The area was covered in craters and broken trees. He had obviously been busy practicing his powers. She was very pointedly aware that at least one person was watching her, ready to kill her if she did anything against the king of the Eldritch. It was so strange to Kaneko. The queen was overwhelming, beyond everything, burdening and warping reality by the very weight of her existence. But Issei was very much none of that. She could feel it, sense it, and almost hear it. The eldritch nature within Issei, growing larger and greater, so slow that none could notice it. Unless they could notice it, unless they had to be fixated on it at times to keep themselves sane and in one piece and not shatter and dash. Kaneko noticed. Even if they never really spoke again, she noticed. Kaneko's eyes trailed up and met with the gaze of her watcher, Issei's silent protector. Gaktha's empty eyes bore into Kaneko's with a look that could shatter ice with intensity. Dark, void-like power bled from Gaktha's arms, and Kaneko could feel the silently musing of Gaktha on whether or not to slaughter the Nakomata devil. He wouldn't be happy if you killed me, Kaneko reminded neutrally. Gaktha tilted her head as she appeared to remember that fact. Issei snorted in his sleep as he suddenly awoke. Wait, what? Oh, hi, Gaktha. Been wondering where you got off to, Issei greeted, rolling his neck to turn to the other person present. Kaneko? I need to talk to you, Kaneko said simply. It wasn't a request, and Gaktha's aura turned slightly more murderous as a result. Issei looked at her with a frown. Gaktha, it's fine. The killer intent lessened mostly, yet not entirely. Still, the servant nodded respectfully before vanishing. Still nearby, they both knew but out of sight. Issei grunted as he stood up, rolling his joints. What's up? Need another house call from Yid? He asked, looking her over for any signs of that being the case. Kaneko wouldn't be surprised if he could somehow see mental and emotional damage in some way now. Why did you help me? Kaneko asked pointedly. I felt bad that you got your mind fractured? You were following me and just happened to be in Oz's splash zone, Issei remarked with an incredulous look. Is it really that hard to accept that I'm not that kind of asshole? Kaneko looked down, not at the ground, but straight ahead at his torso, her eyes unfocused and distant. I just really need to know why. Issei blinked. You okay? You look like you might need that house call for real, he noted in concern. It's not that, Kaneko said with a sigh, rubbing her head. Every now and again, I can still feel it. The cracks, the rifts, the gaps, the parts that remind me that my mind was shattered into a million tiny pieces and it was put back together. Kaneko said with a shudder. A lot of things help. Rias's hugs, Hiba's coffee, Akino's voice, the scent of the clubhouse. But I can always feel her because she is just so much more. Kaneko ranted off, almost desperately with her eyes shaking for a moment. Issei grabbed her on the shoulder. Hey, Kaneko? You okay? You here with me? She stopped and sighed. Yes, and that's part of why I'm here, Kaneko admitted idly, meeting his gaze again. I can sense you too, and if I focus on you, I can ignore her, and that helps. So I just wanted to know why you saved me. Even if there is no reason then to be kind, that's still a reason. Okay, I think I get it, Issei said, trying and failing to smile. Kaneko, I know you've already been a part of this world. I think you always have been, but I don't know that much about real Nakomatas. All the same, I'm sorry you got dragged into this. Kaneko was silent for a moment. So you're not hoping to turn me into a cultist, love slave, or anything like that? She asked bluntly. I know you talked about a harem even as a human. That changed too. Oh hell no. To the second part, I still want the harem. And I wouldn't be entirely opposed if you wanted to be any of those, Issei said with a chuckle, grinning a bit before turning somber. But I would have felt bad and tried to help you even if you were anyone else. I didn't do it because I wanted anything from you, even if it was Rias? Or Aquino? Kaneko asked, glancing down at her less-than-developed bust. Yep, Issei said with a chuckle. Look, I wouldn't mind a slave-themed harem as long as they're love slaves. Emphasis on the love. But having a harem sounds kind of pointless if the girls aren't there because they want to be. Kaneko hummed. You're romantic for a perv. I try, Issei said in amusement as he removed his hands from her shoulders. You okay now? Anything else? Is there anything you'd like as a reward? Kaneko asked curiously. Issei was about to say no when he paused in consideration. He had seen Aza with cat ears, and now he was kind of curious if it was any different from a natural catgirl's. That wouldn't be a bad thing to ask, to see them, right? Don't ask her. Issei blinked as he glanced behind him. You hear something? He asked curiously. Your guard bitch breathing for my death, Kaneko said flatly. Issei snorted. No, Kaneko. Like I said, you don't owe me anything. And honestly, I don't know how mind healing works, but if focusing on me helps you get through the worst of it, I'm happy to be of help, he assured with a grin. Kaneko stared at him, her cheeks dusting just slightly. Your loss. I need to head back now. I'm sure they're all wondering where I am, right? Nice talking to you, Kaneko, Issei said with a smile as she left. I expect she will try to pursue you as a mate in the future. Master, Gaktha commented as she appeared by his side. You think? Issei asked with a grin. Wait, do you have a problem with her? Master, I have a problem with anything that might harm you and displease my queen, she reminded simply. Kaneko's not a threat. As horrible as it is to say, she's basically collateral from me and Aza hooking up, Issei remarked, looking at the disguised eldritch. So, you have been okay since Jupiter? Gaktha nodded. Retaking this human skin took me longer than I like. Then you were busy with a great many matters. Talks with the devils, picking servants, and more. I did not wish to interrupt you unnecessarily. Issei rubbed the back of his head. He wondered if Gaktha even had a life outside of guarding him, but he decided to leave that space can of doles for another day. Aza didn't get mad at you for letting me fight that harpy. Did she? No. Mistress was upset at your injuries, but did not direct it at me, Gaktha acknowledged. Good. I might have actually been upset with her if she had, Issei offered with a smile. Gaktha jerked at that, looking at him oddly. Master, you should not let a lowly servant like me upset the howling harmony of your time with mistress. Howling harmony. Not sure if that was a sex joke or not, Issei remarked. It was not, Gaktha answered. Doesn't change the fact. You did what I asked you to. I'd be mad if Aza punished you for that, Issei explained. Why? Gaktha asked honestly curiously. Do you value my safety, master? Well, yeah. I'd like to think we're at least friends, Issei answered with a shrug. Gaktha's empty face suddenly gave way to shock before slowly morphing into something between awe and joy. Master, I am just a servant, a worshipper. Yeah, well, Aza worships me most nights. I still care about her a lot, Issei countered playfully. The eldritch tongue does not use worship as a euphemism for sexual activity, Gaktha informed flatly. Pretty sure someone told me that already. Still don't care, Issei remarked. Look, Gaktha, you heard what I said to Kaneko. Just because you're my servant doesn't mean you don't matter to me. Thank you, master, Gaktha said softly, lowering her eyes once more. Issei smiled as a short silence came over them. Hey, I've been meaning to ask. Why do you take on that form instead of one that looks like your normal form but human, he asked, recalling the much more voluptuous yet slightly eldritch true form of Gaktha. My form does that naturally, but it causes a corruptive insanity and hypnosis in mortals. Any attempt to use a similar form will have the same effect bleeding out, Gaktha explained. Oh, Issei said in understanding. Well, hope you can use your real form more often. It looks great. Thank you, master. I imagine that was mistress's desire when she created us eons ago. Gaktha returned with a nod of respect. A less comfortable silence came over Issei, prompting him to glance up at the sun. I'm heading home, Gakt. Feel free to do that same, Yes, master. Have a good night, Gaktha said, watching him leave. Issei was mostly sure she was still watching and guarding him as he left the forest. He wondered sometimes who would be stupid enough to attack him now short of Nyerly, but he knew he'd probably meet someone fitting that description in due time. After all, he had eternity and infinite chances to test the limitless bounds of stupidity. He shook his head at that thought. It was surreal sometimes, feeling his mind and being changing slowly into something else, more other, beyond. Even his thoughts were changing. It was still him, yes, but if he had been born a dog, it would have still been him, just with a different way of thinking. And so as he became an eldritch god, his current way of thinking changed too. Evolved, twisted, morphed. Still him, but only a non-eldritch that knew him well might see the similarities. The eldritch would by default. Feeling existential dread seemed to be a foreign concept to eldritch, thankfully, as he hadn't had any of that so far. Within no time at all, he found himself home. Mom, Dad, I'm home. You're home, his mother called, peeking out from the kitchen. Ha, I thought I heard you upstairs already. That was interesting. Normally, the eldritch reality warping prevented his parents from hearing anything up there. Probably just something's fall. Or I left some hentai on. His mother sighed. Of course you might have. Your father is busy with work. So do me a favor though, and take out the trash before bed tonight. Got it, Issei acknowledged as he headed up to his room. He vaguely sensed something was different, but as he stood outside his room he couldn't guess what. Then he sensed Aza had arrived in the room, prompting him to open the door. Aza, I'm Dash. He stopped and blinked as he took in his room. It was different, bigger, and most of it empty. The bed was also bigger. The walls and sheets were colored in a sensual dark red. Opposite the bed was a table for two, set with black candles and blue flames. At either side of the table were cthulhu and ectosa, dressed in their maid attires, placing dishes of food on the table with some drinks that were probably something worse than mere alcohol. Across from him was Aza, seemingly surprised at his arrival, before she smiled lovingly at him. Issei returned it. Welcome home, master, mistress. We hope you both enjoy this night together, the twins offered, motioning to the table in sync. Oh, I think we shall. Right, Aza? Issei said with a smile, just short of a smirk. Indeed, beloved, Aza said with half-lidded, loving eyes. From her own corner of space, Shub giggled in amusement as the couple took their seats. They're so sweet. It's so easy for them to see a gift for both of them and think the other got it for them, she mused, finding the king and queen endearing in their ways. Only question now is, will they talk before or after they mate again? Tonight has been wonderful, Issei, Aza said pleasantly, her plate empty, same as Issei's. They had spent nearly an hour just talking and laughing together. Yeah, we really needed some us time, Issei agreed with a content sigh. I've kind of been a bit, I don't know, standoffish? Absent? I don't know the word, but I know what you mean, Aza assured tenderly. Was it because of how I've been acting? Issei looked at her curiously. What do you mean? I haven't exactly been around as much either. Or did you just think I had queenly business to take care of? She asked with an ironic smile. Well, I didn't assume you didn't, Issei admitted. What were you doing then? Giving you space. Not the emotional kind I know humans talk about. I mean physical, Shub-type space, Aza explained. Okay, but why? I didn't make it seem like I didn't want you around. Did I? Issei asked in worry. No, nothing like that, Aza assured quickly. It wasn't you, just everyone else. I know you've been handling eldritch diplomatic relationships with the devils. I just didn't want to be there every moment and make them think the eldritch only listen to you because I'm there. I mean, I am the eldritch king because you settled for me, Issei said with a joking grin. Aza didn't smile. Her hair grew darker, and her eyes lost some warmth. I didn't settle, Issei. Being with you could never be settling. Issei looked briefly surprised before looking away. Sorry. It's still kind of hard to believe someone like you fell in love with me. It's hard for me to believe you even exist, Aza said. her hair and eyes returning to normal as she laid her head down in her crossed arms, still looking at Issei. I was afraid for so long you were a dream that wasn't real. That when you finally said yes, I thought I might wake up and it was just a happy thought I let grow too big. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about, Issei admitted awkwardly. Aza, can you tell me about my past lives a bit? Aza blinked. I can, but why? Did something happen? Yes, you happened, Issei answered self-consciously. According to everyone that mentions them, you waited for eons for me to actually say yes to you. I must have rejected you 1,001 times, but you kept coming back. And you just left me in peace each time. I don't understand how or why I turned you down, or how I could be worth trying so much for. Aza stared at him for a long, long time before looking up. It started about 1 billion years ago. Issei gave her his utter attention. Aza played with one of her ponytails, the hairs constantly shifting between being scales, vines, strings, and hair again. You weren't human that time. Similar. Another mortal race. But you had scales and forearms. I think you wanted to be human though. You were one of the first souls to reincarnate to Earth once they evolved into their current form. Mortals can choose their reincarnation? Issei asked absently. Sometimes. Most souls are just in a river and follow the currents. But some are a stream of their own, tailing off into their own paths, Aza explained, shrugging and ignoring the tentacle wing that popped out of her back, the arm of the wing rubbing her own shoulder nervously. I don't even remember how I came to that planet anymore. Was it a worshipper? Did an eldritch ask for my help? I don't know. I wore a shape that wasn't like this. It was about this small but not as safe to be around. Issei could almost see it. Something from memories 1,000 lifetimes ago. Something terribly wonderful. Everyone ran away from me, or went insane. Then I found you. You were just sitting under this tree eating these things. They were like fish but also looked like something between an armadillo and a jellyfish. I came up to you, you looked up, and Aza finally met his eyes. You didn't go insane. You weren't even scared. I was confused, surprised. And then you gave one of them to me. Those animals you were eating. You smiled, and you handed me one. Issei blinked. You fell in love with me for sharing a meal? No, it's not the meal, and that wasn't the only reason. But what started it all was what I saw in that meal. Aza said like she was struggling to find the words, ignoring as her chair began to grow tiny spider legs along the frame. Issei, I could see you. All of you. Your intent, your desires, your very soul. You knew I was something otherworldly, something almighty and powerful. You knew what I was on some primal level. But you weren't afraid. Surprised and confused. But you weren't afraid. Not even worried. So when you offered me that food, there was nothing. No ulterior motive, no expectation, no trying to appease me, no fear for your life, nothing. You just saw me as a stranger passing through and offered me some food. Issei was starting to understand what she meant. His very first interaction with Aza had been an act of simple and genuine kindness, sharing a meal with a stranger with no expectation in return. After that, I watched you, visited you. You were kind and strong. Some of your kind thought I was a demon that needed to be killed. They weren't a threat to me, but for some reason, you still acted like you needed to defend me. Aza said before her eyes went utterly, horribly hollow. Then they hurt you and I erased them. Bodies, souls. I erased their minds last, just because I wanted them to know they would cease to exist soon. Issei would have been horrified by that at some point in his life, but now? He disapproved to some extent, but not enough to interrupt her. I healed you. Or, rather, I made the wounds not exist. I spent many years with the first Issei. Some of the time was with you, but I also just watched you, trying to understand you. I watched you love, care, fight, and so much more. There was something more to it than I had ever seen in a mortal. The species of your first incarnation weren't very romantic at the time. I think you actually invented romance for them. You were always the most attached to your mates. And when I watched you with them, I started to feel something else. I think it was jealousy or longing. I wanted to be one of them, to be with you. But I couldn't bring myself to force that dream into reality, because then it wouldn't be you. I needed to do it right. I needed to ask and be accepted by you. I felt that in my eternal soul as a fact that would never change in all of and even beyond reality. Why did I say no in that life? Issei asked softly. Aza looked somewhere between amused and sad. I didn't know how to ask. Literally, I didn't know the words that would convey what I wanted. I won't lie. I asked you with my soul, and your soul nearly went deaf in a sense. I was so worried, and I hated myself for doing that to you, just by trying to ask you to be with me. I asked everyone, Yog, Shub, even Nirely, for help on fixing what I did. Was it that bad? Issei asked in surprise. No, I just needed Yog to undo it. You always bounced back from just about anything, Aza admitted with a fond chuckle. But I had to be sure. I had to be. I felt an ache I never knew, overrun with guilt and sorrow. So when we were sure you were fine, I erased our meeting from your conscious memories. And I blessed you to live a long, blissful life. You became a great king on that planet, leading them back from the edge of extinction, brought there by my time on the planet. You were the lover of many. You were happy and had a massive family of mates and children. Honestly, that's normally how your life ends, successful. Surrounded by beautiful mates and the wonderful children you sire. You die young sometimes in a fight, because you just can't seem to ever live a boring, peaceful life. I can see the appeal in both, Issei said absently. How long did it take you to learn how to ask properly? I never messed up like that again, Aza said with a self-deprecating chuckle. I messed up the question a few times because languages and customs are complicated and change so fast. But usually you have other reasons. Sometimes you were busy in some war or adventure. A few times you just didn't trust me, which honestly was fair in context. You had some bad run-ins with the supernatural and eldritch factions in those lifetimes. Another time you thought I was a succubus. Oh, I was so tempted to accept that on a technicality, but I knew you didn't mean it how I needed you to mean it, Aza said in longing. You even had times where you were already spoken for in some regard, and that complicated things. So, for a lot of reasons, I kept you waiting all this time, Issei summarized an apology. Well, Aza looked up with a hum. There were a couple times when you turned me down just because you thought you weren't ready. Huh? Issei asked in surprise. Some of you I made it pretty far with, explaining who I really was, that I had been loving you all this time, and wanting to ascend you. All that. But when I made the offer, you sometimes just apologized and said you weren't ready. It wasn't time. I didn't know what that meant, but that's true for a lot of things. So I just gave you the blessing and let you be. Huh, Issei said idly. Wonder what the hell I was thinking back then? Aza smiled reassuringly. I'm sure you'll find out. You'll be able to view your past lives one day. But is there anything else you'd want to know? Well, besides turning you down, I didn't ever try to hurt you, did I? Issei asked, only vaguely concerned. Mainly because he doubted a mortal Issei could even give Aza a paper cut. Oh, you did a few times. Usually when you thought I was a demon or something trying to trick you, Aza confessed without judgment. Sorry? Issei offered sheepishly. Oh, it's all right. It wasn't exactly unwarranted. I mean, you were being attacked by demons and other stuff in those 3 or 4 lifetimes, Aza recalled with a frown. Never did figure out why. But I didn't really care. Just that they were trying to kill my beloved. Oh, Issei said in understanding. Thanks, Aza. For everything really, but also just for telling me that. It's been bugging me for a while. What someone like you saw in someone like me. Issei, I didn't fall in love with you because you gave me a meal, Aza assured with a smile. It gave me a reason to look at you, really look at you. Your soul, your mind, everything. I fell in love with you all those eons ago. And trust me, Issei, I looked into many souls across time and space wondering if anyone, anything at all could stir my heart like you. And across all infinite impossibility beyond reality. You're the only one I love like this, Issei. And I hope one day, when you gain more of your eldritch senses, you'll be able to understand in full how much I mean it when I say it. I love you. You don't say it like it's something you feel or believe, Issei said in a soft tone, his gaze distant. You say it like it is eternal and immutable truth. As if in all of the confusion of existence, it is the only thing that makes perfect sense to you. Issei blinked, almost not realizing what he was saying, as he looked up and saw Oz kissing him. She was kissing him. She had launched herself forward, melded through the table, and was now kissing him for all she could. Yes, yes, and infinite times yes, Ozza said, crying tears of happiness that glowed with light and smelled like the nebulas of unborn stars. That is exactly how I feel, Issei. Issei wrapped his arms around her lovingly, bringing her head to his chest. Ozza had spent unfolded ages longing for him. Finally, after all this time, she had been able to express it, release it, and gift it to him. And he welcomed it like the sunrise of a new day, like the ending of a storm. When had he gotten so poetic with his thoughts? I love you, Ozza, he whispered in her ear. I do. Ozza smiled sappily, almost literally melting into his embrace. I don't know how to describe how you say it. You mean it, and my heart may burst like a quasar. But I don't know the words to do it justice, beloved. Take your time, Ozza. We have eternity, Issei encouraged. Yes, yes we do, Ozza agreed, nuzzling into his shoulder as she unmelded from the table and crawled into Issei's lap. They sat there for a long time, basking in one another's presence, peaceful and content, and all was right in the universe. Literally, as far as most were concerned. So, Issei started softly in her ear. Ozza hummed in question but didn't open her eyes. What were you saying earlier about giving me space to act as king? Issei reminded curiously. Oh, right, that, Ozza said absently, opening her eyes as she traced unspeakable runes on Issei's chest. I just wanted to give it time so no one treats you like you're I don't know a good human word for this. I didn't want them to treat you like you're just the queen's husband instead of the king of the Eldritch. Okay, Issei acknowledged. And I'm bad at reading a Euclidean rune, Issei, Ozza reminded. Do you think they got the message? Oh yeah, I think they're treating me like you, but more approachable, less terrifying in the objective sense. Issei mused. Ozza was not insulted by that description. Would you mind me joining you? I mean, you are the queen, you literally don't need my permission, Issei remarked. I kind of sort of do, Ozza said, sighing as she sat up to face him properly. Issei, everyone is following your lead on this. I don't need your permission, no, but I don't want to mess this up because, again, I can't read in Euclidean rune. Issei mulled that over. So what you're saying is I'm basically in charge of diplomacy? Yep, Ozza agreed with a wide smile. Does that make Yydra my secretary? Issei in amusement. Because we know it's not Yog. Yog is the secretary, and we loathe it to be true, Ozza corrected knowingly. Damn it, Issei said with mock annoyance as he looked up at the ceiling, hands idly on Ozza's hips. You're friends with Aquino. I think including you is a good thing. 'Cause, well, Ozza tilted her head. I think you have a better shot at making friends with the devils and the rest than with the most normal humans, Issei reminded. It is true. I have never felt the urge to melt the minds of any of the devils so far, Ozza agreed with a casual consideration. Though Asia is wonderful, Asia is too good for this or any world, Issei retorted bluntly. Are we sure she isn't an angel? I know you don't mean that literally, but no, she's not, Ozza said with a giggle. So, shall we? Issei smirked, gripping her rear firmly against him as he stood up, holding her up as she wrapped her arms around his neck. I think it's time we moved onto the desert, Issei agreed as he led Ozza to the bed. By Ozza's famished look, she agreed. Time skip. Lagussin, aka Lag Kishu, was currently taking a nap on his motorcycle. Or rather, the motorcycle that was his steed half in disguise. Anyone who passed by would think him irresponsible, as the engine appeared to be on and idling. In truth, that was his horse half sharing his impatience. Humans had such a strange priority with time. 3,000 years was too soon to end a society, but a few hours early was too soon to go to class. The motorcycle turned its front end on its own, and Lag opened one eye to watch what happened. "We're going to win, issei." Aza cheered as she rode on his back while he ran down the streets. Just behind them was Ektosa, riding on the back of cthulhu. Both seemed rather unbothered by their potential loss. Lag furrowed his brows. Is that a human mating ritual or something? Is that why they say riding when they mean fucking? His motorcycle rumbled in mutual confusion. Well, that's probably my cue, Lag reasoned as he rose off the bike. Try not to eat any more of time, or space for that matter. The motorcycle revved itself in response. I know Shub doesn't mind. Just like you know Yog doesn't care. She still hates when we do that, Lag reminded gruffly. This is why I hate being in two halves. You're the half of me with no self-control. Now it revved even louder. Oh, don't start that again, Lag said as he walked off to school. Meanwhile, all the students in the schoolyard looked to the entrance as Aza hooped in victory, now on the ground and hugging Issei. Off to the side, cthulhu sat on the ground, taking deep breaths with her sister leaning over her. We lost, sister, Ektosa remarked. You are much slower with legs. Snake tails are better. They're like tentacles for walking, cthulhu remarked, calm despite her exertion. Well, looks like they're having fun, Motohama said in resignation and betterment. Matsuda growled to himself. What the hell, man? Why is Issei suddenly the chick magnet? Aza, the twins, Asia, the Italian angel, Motohama listed off in envy. You know, I heard people saying they've seen him talking with all kinds of hotties, like Rias and Aquino, even the school prez, Matsuda bemoaned. Okay, let's be real, that last one was probably scolding him for something, Motohama reasoned. That said, that damn traitor. Who does he think he is? Leaving us behind in the desolation of virginity, while in a paradise of babes. I wouldn't mind, if he put in a good word for us or some of the other girls might be giving us shots. But no, they still don't recognize our riz. They just steer clear of Issei because his girl has got a nasty bark when her man is being slandered by harpies, Matsuda commented. Not to mention there's that biker guy that just walked in. He acts like he works for Aza or her family or something. He also looks like he'd probably throw us through a window if we upset the lovely couple somehow, Motohama bemoaned. Oh come on, we can take him. He's probably just some half-ass bully that gets by on acting touch and looking a bit scary, Matsuda suggested boldly. Come on, Issei needs a bit of humbling. Bro hardly sees or talks to us anymore. Like he's too good now that he's got a chick. What do you want to do? Humiliate him or something on a date? Motohama asked dubiously. Something like that, Matsuda said with a chuckle. Or maybe put out an embarrassing photo across the school of him. Something to end his good streak and remind him we still exist. Motohama hummed in thought. Meanwhile, deep in a realm that never had and never would exist, Nyarlathotep reclined on a throne made of twisted and malformed flesh, the mouths groaning and eyes weeping from the utter agony of its misfortunate existence. A soft lullaby to the Black Pharaoh's ears. She gazed through space and time with an insane yet relaxed grin, peering across the void of reality to watch her mother enjoying herself with her beloved. But Nyarli wasn't focused on them. No, they were the peaceful center around which a massive storm would form. All around them was so much potential for chaos, so many weaving paths that led to places even Yog could not notice. The unlikely, improbable, hidden paths that were in time's own blind spot. Like how a human could be staring right at a picture and never find Waldo even if he was right in front of them. Wars, betrayals, disasters, and more were all just around the corner. Every corner. Further and further, only the will of the Kungur held the fragility of peace and safety intact. It was nearly impossible, even by those hidden paths, that Issei would ever turn his back on that notion, that he would take war to the creatures of Earth. But oh, if he did, what a sight that would be, what an orchestra he could conduct. Oh well, one day some other world would provoke the royal ire, and the eldritch god that human was, is, and will be. After all, the only thing as infinite as eternity was the brazen stupidity of mortals. What an interesting Kungur you are becoming, Issei Hayudu. She whispered his name teasingly. At school, Issei glanced up curiously. He missed how Aza narrowed her eyes, but didn't glare. Yet, I wonder when we'll finally meet face to face. God to God, Kungur to messenger, she purred, her own tentacles emerging to stab through her throne, eliciting screams of torture and despair. A symphony she delighted in. I'm looking forward to it. I really am, Daddy. Now it was Aza who didn't notice Issei, who was smirking a bit without realizing it as they continued on to class. A giant creature, much like a centipede, but with legs in all directions and a mouth that opened like a slit across its body, let out a great screech as it collapsed along the shores. It was covered in many gauges and stabs, vile green blood leaking from its corpse. A group of seemingly humans gathered around it, one resting on one of the legs like it was a seat. That's another one down, one of his comrades said with a smile. I was worried. I like Tasmania. There'll be another soon, Max said with a sigh to his fellow Eldrititans. More and more of the pests drop through with all the gods here, and they don't care. Typical. Look on the bright side, at least they only gathered here because the queen got hitched, a female one said with a grin. Who would have thought too? I mean, I heard that old Granny Z was chasing a mortal throughout his incarnations until he agreed to marry her. But I didn't really believe it. Some of the others chuckled as well. I don't know if he's a blind idiot as well, Max said levelly. But he certainly hasn't gone off the deep end with power. He's at least trying to keep things stable for now. But the only real upside to this situation is that most of the gods are focusing on Earth and not the other planets. We could always go kill him, the female suggested with a smirk. He's what? Not even an elder yet. We time it, and I do mean time it right, and we can gut him out of that nice human shell he still has, and poof. No Eldritch King for a few thousand or million years. Yeah. But we're not ready to try and take the queen on herself, Max said with a frown. Perhaps Belle has the wrong idea, another said. The king is still human, mostly. Maybe we can convince him to join us. We don't need to bother with the queen if she just, as the humans would say, retires with her husband to their own little love spot of the universe. Max hummed in thought before frowning as he looked up and saw something hovering in the air. It was like a black snowflake. What interesting ideas you all have. Max instantly turned around, his arm forming into a blade of gnarled elder flesh. But the great she did little more than chuckle. Max's blade repelled. The leader of the Eldrititans was sent flying, gashes appearing all over his body. Max! Several of his comrades exclaimed, rushing to stand in front of him, barriers and weapons pointed at the glowing golden eyes of the Black Pharaoh. Max gritted his teeth, standing as his wounds healed. Nyarlathotep, messenger of the gods, the queen's vilest spawn. Such pretty titles you give me, little fetus, lord of the unborn specks, Nyarli returned in kind, glancing at the corpse of the giant monster. That wasn't very nice, you know? Killing one of mine. It's always a pleasure to rid you of a toy, bitch. Belle screamed defiantly at her. Nyarli responded by tearing her throat out. She didn't move or teleport. She simply reached out, and Belle's neck was suddenly ripped out and in Nyarli's hand. The Eldrititan did not die, merely collapsing and holding her windpipe as her blood painted the sands. I don't like that one. Mother would like her less. Pray you never meet her. I'll make sure she finds you before the Kungur even knows you existed. Nyarli warned with wide, bright, unholy eyes, tossing the flesh aside and flicking the blood from her fingers as if it were filth. Don't try to scare us, messenger, Max said with a glare. You know as well as I do that we Eldritch are eternal. We always return. Yes, you do, again and again. I wonder how many deaths she will take from you. Leader of the Nusmasafs, Nyarli mused airily. Max bristled and his skin rippled with his true form beneath. Do not call us that. Why? It is what you are. Or what you're not. Not mortals is the first name we gave you, little fetus playing at mortality and morality. Nyarli teased. Better than any game you play, someone muttered, fearful but annoyed. Sometimes, Nyarli agreed flippantly before addressing them fully. Let me make this perfectly, cosmically clear to you. If the Sultan dies by your hands, the Sultana will rage. and her rage will devastate this planet you care for beyond merely destroying it, and untold scores of other worlds you would try to protect. And you care? Belle asked, spitting up more of her blood from her still healing throat. She's the messenger, Belle, Max reminded sternly. She might seem like their enemy at times, but she's ultimately on the side of her fellow outer gods. And they want Earth intact, with all their current and future worshippers among the mortals. Mortals you are desperate to save and protect, Max. Nyarlathotep breathed deep. Self-righteous hypocrisy. It tastes so new on an eldritch god. Max steeled himself. What do you want? Nothing. You killed one of mine. I thought I'd say hello, Nyarlathotep said teasingly, waving at them. Tada! Like a black hole imploding. She vanished, a shockwave vaporizing the immediate area around her, including a piece of the dead centipede, leaving a large, gory chunk of it missing. And don't come back! Belle snarled feebly before turning to their leader. Max, what now? His silence was as harsh as his scowl. Meanwhile, Sona was not clairvoyant. She could not see the future, merely plan accordingly and make educated guesses on potential scenarios. So, when a knock came at the door and Tsubaki returned from answering it to the meeting room of the student council, aka Sona's peerage, with an absurdly pale look on her face, Sona didn't know for certain who it would be, but she had a good guess. With a deep breath, she walked to the door and opened it up. She did her best not to react, mainly by keeping control of her bladder. Queen Aza, Sona addressed, keeping her voice calm while glancing at the other figure with her. King Issei, what do I owe the pleasure of this visit? You have a problem, Aza said bluntly. I do, Sona asked with a furrowed brow. Personally, or devil-kind collectively? Devil-kind, but I think most kinds won't be happy about this, Issei informed awkwardly. Sona nodded. Please come in. Would you like some refreshments? No, Issei already gave me a drink before we got here, Aza answered without hesitation as she walked in. Sona furrowed her brow at the wording, eyes pointing to Issei with a questioning look. Yeah, that kind of drink, Issei confirmed with a grin that was half apologetic, half perverted. I see. Would it be rude to ask if the shamelessly casual mention of intimacy is one of her quirks, or is that an eldritch norm? Sona asked curiously. Mostly an outer god one, honestly, Issei answered, scratching the back of his head. The other eldritch gods always know when an outer god is getting laid, especially Aza and me. Sona said as she closed the door. In truth, Sona was just trying to stall the royal pair long enough for Tsubaki to warn the rest of the peerage. Within a few minutes, they were sitting at the long table used for meetings both regarding Sona's matters as a devil and as student president. Her peerage stood around her in silent support and obvious intrigue over what was going on. Well, glad to see all of you are doing okay, Issei said, glancing over the peerage. Do I smell another dragon in the room? Aza asked idly, taking a sniff. Issei, do you smell it? Aza, I can't smell souls that well yet, Issei reminded. That would be me. Ma'am, sir, Saji informed, holding up his hand awkwardly. My sacred gear is the Black Dragon's Pulse, containing part of the Dragon Vritra. That means almost nothing to me, but thank you for answering, Aza said honestly. You're welcome, Saji answered uncertainly. Was that why you came here? Oh no, we would have just asked that instead of making a meeting out of this, Issei admitted. There's a cult that's going to summon a dark young to attack devils. Sona's eyes widened and she could feel her subordinates grow tense. That is serious. Do you need our help to stop them? In a way, Issei answered. All eyes went to Tomo, who swallowed under the eyes of Aza and even Issei. I mean no disrespect, but wouldn't stopping the ritual or telling them not to summon it be easy for either of you? Yeah, that's where things get messy, Issei said with a sigh. Sona, how much do you know about Shub? I know she's one of the kinder outer gods, for lack of a better word, and most who know of her say she is actively on humanity's side. Sona answered, steepling her fingers. Why? She also considers all her worshippers to be like children, Issei added meaningfully. And this is the part where our various limbs are a little tied. The cult isn't doing this just because they can. They were attacked recently by a devil. A lot of cultists are dead or missing, Issei said with a firm look. Sona tried to keep herself from paling. She mostly succeeded. I understand. What is it you suggest? Simple, Aza said bluntly. The ritual is literally being done in the name of revenge. If this devil is killed, the ritual will not work. All you need to do is deliver them to us, and then only one devil has to die. Sona took a deep breath. We need time and information. You'll have both, Issei assured. The ritual won't happen for a few weeks. It wasn't a lot of time, but it was better than it could have been. We're not going to war with you over this. Sona stiffened as she realized that the Eldritch Queen was looking right through her existence and reading her like an instruction manual. You were worried the Eldritch were going to declare war over a single cult being destroyed, Aza summarized knowingly. If we did that, we would have destroyed the world long before your species even existed. Sona bit her cheek to keep calm. Aza, Issei spoke up. You're doing that thing again, where you sound very ominous and scary. Aza blinked as her expression lightened somewhat with an apologetic tinge. Sorry. I'm still trying to learn all the different facial degrees of seriousness. Facial? Saji repeated with a frown. I was trying to assure you, not scare you, Aza explained with a sigh, looking at the rest of the devils in the room. I will never understand how mortals master all the quirks of having a face. There were some uncomfortable chuckles around at that. Sona took a breath. I see. Thank you, Queen Aza. I appreciate the sentiment, Sona said. And she meant it. Do you know why they attacked the cult? Who they are? The who we know, the why is still a bit unclear. We know it wasn't self-defense. They came in spells blazing, Issei informed. It was Aza who answered. I'm told he's of some nobility amongst you. I believe you call him Diodora Astaroth. Sona resisted every urge to reach her hand up and rub her eyes. Well, this was a fine mess. Meanwhile, Diodora scowled in displeasure as he studied his prize. Oh, she was pretty enough. Not quite on par with that nun he had been looking forward to breaking in, but on par with any of the others he collected for his peerage. Long blue hair, a slim form, and sky-blue eyes that he didn't recall ever seeing in normal humans. Not this shade at least. All in all, she was a sufficient replacement for Asia Argento. Even if he had to raid an eldritch cult to get her. And now he had her just where he wanted. Bound by a magic circle, on her knees and at his mercy. The trouble was, she grinned. Actually grinned through what should have been a sustained shock of magic that should have left her unable to think. Only gasp and scream in pain. He hadn't broken her yet because of all things, he had picked a masochist. But the minute it subsided, she went back to smirking defiantly at him. What a lovely treat, Mr. Devil. I could almost forgive you for killing my brothers and sisters in faith. Diodora gave her his usual, too wide to be genuine smile. It's a shame you won't. I never toyed with a masochist before. It might even be an interesting turn of pace. Breaking you through the very thing you like. I'm not sure if I could pull it off. But it would be fun to try. Yes, well, I suppose it would be nice to be around a woman that you didn't have to mind break to spend time with you, Mr. Devil, she taunted. Out of pure instinctive wrath, Diodora shocked her even more. The cultist just started laughing. Oh, you must really want me to forgive you. Tell you what, if you can impress me, I'll ask the Great Mother to be merciful and only kill you instead of taking your soul. Diodora snorted. Please don't pretend. We both know your gods care very little about their cults. More so when they have so many more to spare. You don't know about the goddess of the woods, do you? She guessed knowingly. What's there to know about any of their kind? Diodora said dismissively, waving her off. The less one knows, the better. They're all just cosmic hazards to avoid, and they'll pay no attention to you. None of that is wrong, the cultist acknowledged. So, while I'm waiting on you to be slaughtered like a pig to feed to the black goat and her 1,000 young, might I ask why you attacked us? I thought the devils were ones trying to play nice with the eldritch. Diodora sighed. His other peerage members weren't this talkative during this. The only sounds they made were the ones he enjoyed. screams of pain and desperate pleas for mercy. There was this nun, one of the Christian humans. I was after her, but she ended up being given to your new king. The king has a nun? She asked in surprise. Okay, I actually will ask for mercy now. That was valuable information. I'm thrilled, Diodora drawled. No, obviously, I'm not going to try and steal from someone like that. But I thought I should collect my compensation from one of the many little infestations of eldritch cultists. And you seemed like a good fit until now. So sorry to disappoint. She shot back with a smirk that shattered any possibility of it being sincere. But in short, your prey got stolen by a bigger predator. And you decided to scavenge from the smallest fringes of that predator's metaphorical territory. By the stars, you are as petty as you are twisted, she said, more in praise than accusingly. You really should have considered joining us. I can only imagine the fun you would have had with the right cult. Diodora frowned. I am Diodora Azathoth, one of the great pillars of devil nobility. I would never lower myself to be the neglected pet of a tentacle freak from beyond the stars. Hey, who are you calling neglected? She asked in annoyance. Just how past sanity are you already? I thought for sure you were one of the less tainted there, Diodora said with disappointment. On second thought, I'm done with you for now. With a snap of his finger, the door opened as 3 of his peerage entered, including his silver-haired queen. Perfectly in sync, they kneeled before him. Yes, Master Diodora? Take her away. Stuff her away somewhere secure while I think about what to do with her, he said flippantly. As you command, Master Diodora, they said, 2 of them moving to grab her once the magic circle was dispelled. See you soon, Mr. Devil, the cultist called over her shoulder with a malicious smirk. Milla, my queen, he called out with a smirk, making her stiffen and stop. Stay a bit. I need to vent. Of course, Master Diodora, she said, hiding any despair or hesitation as she turned to him again. She walked back up to him, and Diodora smirked as she began to remove her clothes. Despite her mask, he could see it easily. The fear, the terror he had instilled firmly in her when he had broken her will. And he licked his lips. Broken in or not, his old toys could always use some maintenance, some remedial lessons. Besides, her face was so cute when it was twisted in terror and agony. Meanwhile, why do I feel the sudden urge to punch someone? Issei asked idly as they left school for the day. Maybe someone said your name? Aza suggested, leaning closer to inspect something on him or in him that only an eldritch could see. Can you do that yet? No, that's not it, Issei answered before shoving it to the back of his mind. So, how is Shub doing? Oh, she's fine. She's used to her cultists dying. She is just glad she has more. But yes, she will be sending one of her older fawns if that ritual is done before this devil is dead. Aza informed, jumping onto a small stone fence and balancing on it as she walked. Humans have trouble doing this? Aza, humans only have one sense of balance. You have what, 29? Issei pointed out. I'm not sure what counts as balance, so maybe? Aza answered idly, jumping off the end of the fence to rejoin Issei. She does realize the other factions will have to try and kill it if she does, right? Issei asked warily. Aza frowned, but it seemed like a pout. Do you want to just stop the ritual? Not really, Issei answered in resignation. Look, Aza, I get it. You have a good point about all this. We're holding our own in line as much as we can. We need to make the devils hold up their end by also being accountable. I'm glad we agree, but I'm sorry the situation displeases you, Aza said in sympathy. All of this worry is rather moot if we assume the devils will handle the situation before a dark young is unleashed into the underworld. I guess that's true. We have time before we need to worry about anything, Issei said before furrowing his brow in confusion. Speaking of time, where is she? If you want, why don't you try calling her? Aza said, smiling encouragingly. Issei stopped, prompting her to as well. He looked around briefly, finding they were alone. With a shrug, he decided to give it a try. Azathoth. The instant the sounds left his tongue, a portal opened in the ground before him. From it, Yog walked up as if ascending an unseen staircase. Yes, Kungur, she asked curiously, glancing at Aza briefly before giving him her full attention. You have the situation with this devil pretty well handled. Is something wrong? Issei was surprised to hear her so concerned, or that she even had to ask. I think I should be the one to ask that. You haven't been around, or even listening in lately. Which is weird, since you normally have a future Yog watching us. Yog sighed. I apologize. I've been checking up on some things that I can't observe without being there in a more literal sense. Things? Aza said with a frown. Yog. Yog grimaced with an uncertain look. Angu. Yog smiled reassuringly. Oh, just giving you royal lovebirds some priv dash. What was that? Issei asked suddenly. What was what? Yog asked with a blink. Then her eyes went wide in dread. Oh, what? It looked like you glitched in place for a moment. Is your human form on wrong or something? Issei asked in confusion. Ah, that happened, Aza said with a grin. Oh no, Yog said in shame, covering her face. Issei looked between them both with a frown. What am I out of the loop on? Aza chuckled. Well, you know how we've talked about you getting some Aza perks? Some traits that you get just because of your connection to me. Yeah? You were a bit vague on it since you wanted them to be a surprise and not get my hopes up if they took a long time to develop, Issei recalled. Long time for mortals, but yes, Aza agreed. One of them is that you gradually become immune to time itself. Issei glanced up in thought before answering. I mean, aren't all eldritch immune to time a bit? Yes, but also no. See, Yog here can travel back in time and redo an interaction with anyone, even an eldritch. But with eldritch gods, it only works because the amount of time that is reset is so tiny to their perspective they don't even notice it. Due to my eternal frustrations with time itself, I always notice when she does this, but I'm used to playing along. Issei frowned, looking at Yog. What, you constantly redo any meeting you have with anyone until it goes exactly how you want it to? Yog stared at him for a moment, until she vanished. She didn't use a portal, she was just gone. The hell? Issei said in surprise. Well, that was rather rude, Aza said with a disappointed frown. I'll have a talk with her later, Issei. All right. Issei answered uncertainly, but decided to change the topic. What was she checking on though? HM? Oh right, that's when you noticed her looping, Aza recalled. There are several eldritch that can shield themselves from the eyes of time. One of them is Nirely, as you can guess. Okay. But if she can't find them with time, how does she find them? Issei asked idly. She doesn't. She was checking to see if they were perhaps tampering with the various prisons of certain eldritch gods. To see if her sight had been fooled there, Aza explained with a hum. But if someone was doing that, it certainly wouldn't be for any good reason. Well, minus Haster's daughter. But we have her locked up already. I feel like I need to know more about all of that, Issei remarked in surprise. What's this about someone's daughter? Ithaqua, the daughter of Haster, Aza answered with a sad look. It's not a happy story. Can we save it for another time? Seeing her mood, Issei relented. Sure. Just when I think I'm getting settled into this Eldritch King stuff, new curveballs show up. Aza furrowed her brow in worry. Is that a bad thing? Issei hummed, staring up at the sky, and to the stars beyond that thin shell that allowed Lai to prosper on this rock. No, not at all. The great Satans had regular meetings. They had to, as the highest-ranking members of the government overseeing Devilkind. But this meeting was more ominous than normal, even by recent events. Not one of them had a jovial air about them. My cousin has been very foolish, it would seem, Ajuka said evenly. Not even going to try to defend him? Serafal asked in idle curiosity. It doesn't sound unlike him. What they're saying, Ajuka countered. How long, again, did your sister say we had? Sona said the ritual will be complete in 9 days. Serafal answered before glancing at the clock. 8 days now. 7 more than we need, Falbium remarked. It's not that simple, Surzex said with a frown. Diodora Astaroth will die, yes. But I don't want anyone, devil or not, to think we just slaughtered one of our own to appease the Eldritch, that we just gave in to their demand. We need proof, which shouldn't be hard to obtain, Ajuka mused. But this is grounds enough to take him in and interrogate him. No one would question thoroughly investigating something like this, risking a war with the Eldritch. Falbium shook his head. Perhaps we are just fortunate they warned us and didn't just summon it in the underworld. The stronger of the Dark Young would cause trouble for even high-ranking devils, Surzex recalled. Seraphal? Sona did say there would be no repercussion for killing the Dark Young. She did. She also said don't be surprised if they escalate until they kill Diodora. Not that we'd let it go that far, Seraphal said with a sigh. I'm just glad Sona made it out of a meeting with the Eldritch Queen with all her marbles still together. Surzex smiled in sympathy. It gets easier. Rhea speaks to me about her. Her queen, Aquino? She is friendly with her. I hope your sister won't take offense if her servant is stolen by another king, Falbium said in half-hearted jest. I'm scientifically, if not morbidly curious as to the effects to the evil pieces that would have, along with how well this Aquino's sanity is holding up from repeat exposure, Ajuka remarked with a frown. In any case, Falbium? I know it's your jurisdiction, but I am never one to turn down taking work off my hands. Feel free to deal with your cousin as needed, Falbium said with a grin. Ajuka looked unamused but accepted that. I suppose that's it. Not quite, Falbium said reluctantly, rubbing the back of his head. When this wraps up, we might need to ask the Eldritch what they're up to. The table grew concerned, listening intently. As you all know, there has been this unspoken rule among all the factions. Don't provoke the Eldritch. To that end, we have been keeping an eye on Eldritch activity, trying to stay out of their way. Lately, we've found a lot of dead Eldritch showing up, especially shores on the Indian and Southern Ocean, Falbium remarked. The Eldritch faction often have squabbles, Seraphal remarked. But even among their non-divine ranks, it is strange for so many to be fighting at once. And in the ocean? Is it possible something in Relaya? Ajuka shook his head. No, the sunken city is in the South Pacific. Unless the sleeper of Relaya is awake and swimming about. Doubtful. They've been trying to do that for a long time without endangering the world, Surzex remarked. It's one of the few things they keep us regularly informed of, Falbium hummed. I fear even I won't be able to avoid my work at this point. More and more Eldritch are coming to Earth and its realms every day. That settled grimly upon them all. Meanwhile, it all started so simple, even normal. Sure, hunting down a stray devil was never something to take lightly, but it was a welcome sense of normal to Rias and her peerage. Only when they got to the location, they found the devil was already dead, ripped to pieces and shredded to the point of being unidentifiable. And standing over it was a figure, 9 feet tall, standing like a satyr, but less human. Hooved legs, fur all over the body, muscles that made it look more like a bull, but a clear goat head was on top, albeit a very malformed goat head. It looked like 2 skulls had been slammed together, pieced together, and healed into an ugly display of over many off-positioned eyes, teeth, horns, and bones jutting out of the skin. Eldritch, Kaneko summoned up, her hair standing on end as she glared. Definitely not a god, though, Kiba said as he brandished his sword, feeling much less insanity radiating from this being. Devils? It breathed hatefully. Oh, I think it wants to play, Aquino said with a smile, lightning cackling from her fingertips. Wait, Rias said as she stepped forward. I am Rias Gremory, daughter of Duke Gremory. Your king and queen have called for peace between our kinds. I ask you to stand down and leave this place. Peace? It breathed again, its many fangs growing, more growing in to push them out into a misshapen and painful hazard. There is no peace for you. With that, it charged at them. Well, we tried, Rias said as she sent a wave of crimson ruinous power at the Eldritch. It took it head-on, but it was tossed back, many of its horns shattering away. Weak, Kaneko said evenly as she ran to attack it. It roared and tried to hit her, but Kaneko easily stepped past the sloppy blow and hit it in the gut. It let out a pained growl while trying to attack her again. Anyone else worried there's more of them around, with how weak it is? Kiba asked pragmatically, scanning the room for any potential ambush. That is strange. Weak eldritch either run in groups, have an ability to protect themselves, or know when to flee, Aquino said with a frown, getting a strange look from Rias. Aza talks to me about more than just issei, you know. Right? Rias accepted with a frown. Her subordinates were right though. This was too easy. Kiba backed Kaneko up. We'll watch in case something else shows up. On it, Kiba answered as he dashed in with a blade ready. So distracted with Kaneko, the eldritch didn't notice Kiba until he had cut a hand off it. Got this, Kaneko said with some annoyance as her enemy screamed in pain. Just making sure, Kiba assured, scowling as a black tentacle emerged from the blood stump, reforming into a fully regenerated hand. Well, that's one issue, Rias hummed as her peerage easily handled this creature. It would already be dead if they weren't being cautious, expecting something to happen the moment they went in for the kill. Kiba took a leg off as Kaneko leaped up and kicked it to the head, sending it flying. Both looked to Rias as they caught a pause, their eyes silently asking if they should end this. Rias, however, wasn't the type of mistress to force her underlings to do the dirty work all on their own. Her eyes glowed and her hair waved in the air. Looks like I won't get a chance to place today, Aquino said in playful disappointment. With a wave of her hand, Rias sent forth a greater wave of her crimson magic. The beast looked at her in shock and perhaps even fear as the attack headed to engulf him. Get away from him! A dark aura crushed down on their very souls, right before a void-like blackness shot between the attack and the beast. The red bent around the shadow and faded from reality. There, wreathed in shadows, stood the black goat of 1,000 young. Shub-Niggurath. Her human form was intact, but all around it, her true form seemed to be pushing and biting into reality. Shadows that were like flames, that were like tongues, that were like wind. Teeth in her eyes. Infinity within her every breath. You will not hurt him, Shub-Niggurath said as the creature groaned in pain behind her. Kaneko fell back in shock, eyes dilating. Issei, please, Issei, don't let me break again. I will take him away and... Shub stuttered as her eldritch power receded away, leaving her a small human with silver-white hair and goat horns. Rias swallowed, trying to ignore the fearful sweat that had formed on her suddenly as she realized, and comprehended the look on Shub's face. Fear. The eldritch god was genuinely scared right now. But why? Certainly not them, right? Shub. The fuck are you doing? Every head turned to see Issei, standing just behind Rias and Aquino. Rias could safely say he looked pissed. Kungur, please, it's not what it appears, Shub said pleadingly. Just please, don't hurt him. Mother. The beast groaned out. Let me kill them? Please, kill them. Issei sighed heavily as he walked up to Shub, who looked at him like he was something terrible and otherworldly, and she was a mere mortal. Shub, I agreed to not stop the ritual if they don't kill Diodora. You are the one who already said you don't blame people when they kill your spawns in self-defense, Issei said as he stood right in front of her. So, instead of almost mind-melting our friends, why don't you start explaining? Kill them. The beast roared out defiantly as it tried to leap past them, straight for Kaneko. Still too stunned by Shub's violent arrival, the Nico made no move to defend herself. Kaneko! Kiba yelled, jumping to ward off the attack with his sword. Time has a different meaning for Eldritch. Seeing things in slow motion was an everyday occurrence for some. And all things slowed to Shub's gaze as her eyes widened in horror. Not at her spawn or the devil, but at the issei, the kungur. He was already glaring at where her foolish child would be, already had his red gauntlet summoned. Death wasn't that important to an Eldritch, who would eternally return. That didn't stop parentally inclined ones from wanting to protect their brood from pain and suffering, from death and desolation. With tears in her eyes, Shub reappeared in front of her child and, with a heavy heart, sent it flying away with a powerful burst of dark energy. I'm sorry, Iggy. I'm so sorry, Shub whispered softly as the satyr monster groaned in pain, motionless on the ground. Issei sighed and dismissed his sacred gear. Gaktha. Make sure he stays down this time. He said to nothing, and the nothing shimmered as Gaktha appeared near the beast, staring at it blankly. With that, Issei turned to Kiba and Kaneko. You both good? Kaneko? I'm fine. Thanks for stepping in with whatever this is, Kiba said gratefully, looking back at Kaneko who refused to look up. Issei stared before realizing that Kaneko had soiled herself. Oh. Sorry, here, Issei said as he pulled out from a non-existent space in his jacket, his hands now holding a fresh female uniform for Kaneko, complete with new panties. Kaneko blinked to a more stable mindset, staring at the seemingly random, possibly perverted item. Why? Aza can remake her uniform from nothing, but Asia and the twins can't, Issei simplified, passing them to her. Here. They fit all sizes. Kaneko nodded, numbly standing up and trying to ignore her shame as she took the clothes. Thank you, she muttered as she moved to find a private corner to change. Akino, Rias whispered to her queen, who nodded and followed Kaneko. She lingered as she passed Issei. Normally, she'd have some teasing words for him, but she just nodded her thanks before heading after Kaneko. Issei took a deep breath as he turned to the mother of 1,000 young, standing there with a rather subdued look still. Shut, talk. I can't help if I don't know what's going on. It was so strange for Rias to see Issei like this, the stern and displeased king of the Eldritch as opposed to the easygoing, doting boyfriend of Aza. Shub's face twitched in regret, looking to Rias, sending a silent feeling requesting she approach to join the conversation. Rias heeded it with caution, and Kiba joined her protectively. This is Zagarda. He's one of my children, Shub said, pausing to look at Issei. Issei blinked, looking to see Rias's uncertain expression. Oh, the dark young are her spawns. She treats them like her children. But this is her kid in a more literal sense. Rias nodded. So, are you just more protective of your children than your spawns? Or? She asked uncertainly. No, it's just. Shub turns to look back at Agarda's unconscious form. He's a baby, or toddler, I suppose. He doesn't know any better. He was so angry when he heard my cultists were killed, and he ran off here before I realized he slipped away. Then I heard his cries of pain, and you acted as a mother, Rias said with some sympathy. Be that as it may. You were about to kill us when he attacked us. Hell only knows how much you hurt Kaneko's recovery. And if he ran off, what's to stop him from doing it again? Will he even stop when Diodora is dead? Shub said nothing to that. He's so young. He doesn't understand that just because one bee stung him doesn't mean he has to drown every hive everywhere. Rias frowned. I'm not going to raise a fuss about this, so long as Kaneko is okay. But Issei. No, I'm sorry, Kungur of the Eldritch. What will you do? Rias asked diplomatically. Issei sighed. Yeah. Shub is still his mother, so she gets a say in how we handle this, but I won't let him run amok. Sorry about all of this. I'll take him away for now. I promise he won't trouble you again, Shub promised. Sure, Issei answered, giving Shub the nod to leave. She and the satyr promptly vanished in a pillar of darkness. Well, that was one way to spend the night, Issei muttered. Rias regarded him carefully. Yeah. Rias, were you watching the whole time? Rias asked curiously. Kind of mostly, Issei answered. I would have stepped in, but you all had it pretty well handled and I probably would have tried to kill that Agarda myself. I had no idea it was Shub's kid. I just assumed as much when she stepped in. Rias took that in easily enough. I take it Aza is busy? Yeah. She stepped out for a moment to, well, how do I put this in words that you'd understand? Issei murmured. I'm sure I'm better off not thinking about it, Rias decided. Honestly though, what are you going to do? Mainly, figure out if this kid needs an ass-kicking or a playpen, Issei answered flatly. That'll need to be a big playpen, Kiba remarked. I'm sure the Greek gods could loan you a labyrinth, Issei chuckled. Might not be a bad idea. Issei looked to the side and saw Akino and Kaneko returning, the latter wearing a clean pair of clothes. She proceeded to casually and nonchalantly hug Issei around the waist. Thank you. No problem, Issei assured, patting her on the head. Kaneko disconnected from him with a nod, growing a bit annoyed when Akino leaned over to kiss Issei's cheek. You should do that more often, Kungur, Akino said sensually, her eyes half-lidded. All commanding and authoritative. You were rather ravishing back there. Issei blushed and almost grinned boyishly before forcing it into a small smirk. Well, I do recall that you owe me something. And with that, I take my leave, Rias said, summoning a magic circle. Issei, I expect my queen returned physically unchanged and whatever sanity she currently has intact. Not much, Kaneko remarked as she went into Rias's circle. Kiba only waved as he moved to leave as well, the trio vanishing. Well, that happened, Issei remarked, looking at Akino who very firmly had his arm between her boobs. You want to take this someplace a bit more comfortable? He asked uncertainly. I told you Kungur, Akino said, leaning to his ear. Anytime, anywhere, that only left one matter for Issei. Gaktha, he called out, the warrior nun, appearing next to him in an instant. Would you like me to guard the area during your dalliance, master? She asked expectantly. Issei decided to look up the meaning of that word later. Well, you're free to watch too, he added in, a bit teasingly. Oh my, Akino said with a smirk. Gaktha did not blush, but Issei was fairly sure her human shell couldn't blush at all with the way she wore it. I would enjoy that very much, master, Gaktha said before vanishing to watch both the show and potential intruders. Akino grinned as Issei gave his full attention to her, and she spotted a rather hungry glint in those eyes. He placed a hand on her head and shoulder, making her feel more than a few sensations shoot up her spine as he gently but firmly put her on her knees. Undoing her top and licking her lips at the bulge before her, she had only one thing to say. It is an honor to service you, Kungur Issei. Meanwhile, please tell me you are still recording this. While devoid of expression, Yad was utterly unbothered by Aza shaking her shoulder with a rather starry-eyed look, as in she literally had miniature stars in her eyes. Yes, my queen. I record all of your favorite Issei moments for you to etch into memory. Aza huffed. I do not have favorite moments of my beloved. I just have a special one, like when he gets all... How did Akino call it again? Oh, right, commanding and authoritative. He is rather adjusting nicely now that he has a goal in mind. The weight of his own existence is allowing him to slide into the role of the Kungur he intends to be, Yad agreed. But why am I recording this half-breed friend you've made? While she uses her memories to pleasure the Kungur? I understand my beloved's love for boobs, but I'd like to understand the appeal more, Aza mused. To my knowledge, he would consider Rias Gremry's breasts to be perfect despite not being larger. I'm curious as to figure out the more minute parts of enjoying them. So long as you are not jealous, Yad said uncaringly. Though, I'm sure he would take it upon himself to ravish you again just to prove you have no need to be jealous. If I'm jealous of anything, it's technique or talent, Aza said, tilting her head. Though I might try Akino's hairstyle. Issei seems to be enjoying needing only one hand to, what's the word? Throat fuck? Technically true, but I believe the mortals prefer skull fucking, Yad remarked before blinking. I knew female mortals could achieve an orgasm from giving oral, but I do believe that is the first time I've paid any attention to it. I do that all the time though? Aza remarked curiously. My queen, we are all very aware that the Kungur will one day be able to make you orgasm without even touching you. Aza giggled, twirling her pigtails at the prospect. Meanwhile, Diodora remained bored as he left two more of his peerage unconscious from pain and despair. The others would clean up the mess and patch them up soon enough. His prize was still the same, mockingly unbroken due to her masochism, hence his need to vent. Perhaps he needed a new tactic to try something brand new. Perhaps maybe he needed some inspiration. To the library he went. He knew it well and knew just where all of the more niche topics were placed. Not hidden, just in their own little corner. It was here where his path began, studying these tomes that taught him how to so thoroughly break soul and spirit. He smiled wickedly as he found the tome, The Art of Despair by Igo Lanek. Diodora opened the book, eyes drinking in the depraved teachings that lay within. It was like reading it for the first time all over again. But he had to study it closely in hopes of finding something that might break the cultist. So drawn into his reading, Diodora didn't notice. In the dark space where the book had been, an eye watched him, a touch licking at the books as if they were lips. Yes, Diodora noticed nothing of this. Nothing at all. Well, that's it for today. And most likely this week, but please don't forget to like and subscribe. It lets me know that you guys are satisfied with these rushed videos, even if I want to make them better. See you next week.